Welcome to the OB broadcast, episode 2, iteration 3, working title still. How's it going? I know it's been a while since the last one. I've not got good time management skills, so I'm still trying to get these out when I can. Last time I said I was going to talk about cooking and glasses. I also did want to talk about Spider-Man, and I know I've already spoken about Spider-Man. I'm only going to talk about this 2 more times for 2 of the final 2 updates, the DLCs. Look, it's really, really good. So I'm enjoying it. At the moment, I'm playing through New Game Plus. And look, I was trying to get this out to coincide with the update releasing so that it was a little more timely, but it doesn't always work out like that. But hey, we'll get started with Spider-Man, then we'll talk about some other things. So the Spider-Man update came out. It was the first DLC called the Heist. It's part of the 3 City That Never Sleep DLC pack. And it is, like I said last time, relatively cheap. I think it was $25 or $29 Australian, which is, it's pretty cheap for 3 DLCs that, at least going off of the first one, seem to be pretty decent in length. So it updated a couple of things and also gave you the DLC. And I say update a couple of things because the update 1.08, I think, came out pretty much the same time, and that added a few things, so I'm still going to lump those in together. Starting off with spider bots. It's not too big of a spoiler. At some point in the game, you get access to the little spider bots, right? And it's just like a remote-controlled type of robot that crawls along the ground, and I think in the main game, you use it like a handful of times. It's a little more not useful, but it gets a little more use in the DLCs as one of the challenges, and it's pretty fun. I am a big fan of lowering your perspective, so you're looking at things from a lower level, ground level. I think it's interesting, especially in games. That it's just, why can you not go under cars? That's the biggest thing that I really took away. It's really fun and inclusive the way they've done it, but your Spider-Bot can't go under a car. Makes no sense to me because cars were pretty relevant to when you're actually using the Spider-Bot. So I feel like it's a really missed opportunity that you can't go under the cars. And you know what? You should fail the challenge if you get run over by a car and you die. It just makes sense. So it's just a really small nitpicky thing, but I do have to be really small and nitpicky because it's just such a good game. It's got very few things that suck about it. One of which, though, is Screwball. So Screwball is like a very minor character in the story and then makes somewhat of a smaller reappearance in the DLC. And it's just awful. It's so bad because the character is meant to be this like, I'm a hip Twitch streamer but I'm edgy and a borderline criminal. And it's so bad because they're using the nomenclature that old people think young people use, but they actually don't. And look, Spider-Man retorts with similar sort of, phrases, but that's sort of his thing. Spider-Man, he's got his quips and his corny one-liners, so that makes sense. But every time I listened to Screwball talk, I thought, this is what an old person thinks a young person sounds like, or this is a parody of that. And it just came off as really, really annoying. It wasn't enjoyable. There were a few challenges associated with her, and they just straight up were not fun. Anything that involved Screwball, I personally did not find fun. I don't know if it was because I had these preconceived notions about the character, and therefore anything associated with her, I then disliked. But I didn't enjoy it. And you might think that they were fun in some way. Granted, so there are a few different challenges that are associated with Screwball, and one of them was similar to a challenge that already exists in the game. It's more of a time thing. It's like a combination of time and swing accuracy. And that one is mildly fun, but it just felt like they were trying to pack in way too much. And way too much, Twitch culture into this. I don't know what led them down that direction. Not my favorite part of the game. I didn't mention this, but in the game, the core game, Spider-Man's quips are really, really good. Like, they're so on brand for Spider-Man. And when you're listening to the DLC, I feel like they are better. It almost feels like the DLC reinforced how good his quips and one-liners were. Just the interactions between him and the characters in the DLC they just seemed better. And it made me appreciate one of the integral parts of Spider-Man. You got webs, you got Spidey sense, and you just got the corny one-liners. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of that as a genre of comedy, it's just funny the way he does it, because they're not meant to be well-written, rehearsed jokes. They're meant to be tension breakers, and he even says so in the game. He says, it was meant to be a tension breaker. And I think it's done really, really well. You didn't see too much of that in Tom Holland's Spider-Man Homecoming. You didn't see that side of Spider-Man coming out, rather. And maybe that's because, Tom Holland is still, his Spider-Man is still a fairly young Spider-Man. Maybe that'll, come in the future. But I've always seen that as just like one of the quintessential parts of Spider-Man. And to see it done so well in this game, to the point where there's even a suit power revolving around it, I think is a great nod to what people knew growing up with Spider-Man. And it just fits really well in the game. The story was pretty good. I felt like it was slightly too predictable. Maybe it's, a nod to something in the game. It revolves around Black Cat, Felicia Hardy. And I know for a fact she most probably appears in the comic books or in other Spider-Man media somewhere. But this is my first real exposure to her. But it just seems to go off the, cat burglar trope, right? Black Cat's not the first cat burglar. And the story seemed predictable. A little bit, not too much. It was nice to see the interactions between him and her and Spider-Man rather, and then Spider-Man and Mary Jane a result. And then the way things played out between the three of them. Not that the two females had any interactions with each other whatsoever. But it was slightly predictable. But then the question is, does that work in Spider-Man? Because if you know Spider-Man at all, and even if you've, never really played the game, but you've seen a bit of the TV show, a lot of what's going on in Spider-Man PS4 is things that you would know if you've watched the cartoon, or if you've watched any of the live-action movies, or if you've read any of the comic books. So to say something is an original in a comic book game, especially Spider-Man, it seems counterintuitive, because you do know what's going on, right? You do know that Spider-Man wins at the end, and you do know that this is the bad guy, and this is the bad guy, and this is the good guy, and this is that. It's just core Spider-Man. It would be interesting to get the perspective of someone that's first experience of Spider-Man was this game, to see how they felt about the DLC storyline, if it was too predictable. But it was enjoyable, nonetheless. Another thing that I didn't appreciate the first time around playing Spider-Man PS4, and I've only really started to appreciate doing New Game Plus, is that the social feed is brilliant. So there's a button, I think it's square, in your options menu, or in your a touchpad menu, where you can see a social feed, and that's the equivalent of Twitter or Facebook or something, where people can tag you or talk about you, or you can just read them. And at the start of the game, you read a few, and then you start to forget about it because the game itself is so engaging. At least that's the way I found myself playing it. But going through in New Game Plus, which I've had to do for a trophy because I'm one of those idiots that, will play through a game again on a high difficulty for a trophy, which is a terrible way to get people to replay a game. But anyway, going through again, I found myself reading the social feed more. And it was partly, like I said, due to New Game Plus, and partly due to a couple of things that were said in the DLC. The social feed is really, really underrated. At least I didn't appreciate it. But it's so highly accurate. Now, I'm convinced that these were people's actual tweets or comments or threads that have just been repurposed for Spider-Man. Because reading through them, they seem like real Tumblr, Reddit, Facebook posts. They just have this air of authenticity. There's someone that writes a Facebook post or a Reddit post, that person going and then writing one for the Spider-Man game, right? And that's you writing for the game. But just something about this felt as if the people writing them were in this world. They were just so highly accurate. There was one in particular in the social feed, and this is one of the ones that it doesn't play to the accuracy of the social feed, but it's just one of those things that unless you're paying attention, you wouldn't have noticed. And it's a post that says, "Demons in the night, their breath whispers our demise, save us, web slinger." That's cool. It's just like a post about, one of the integral enemies of the game. And then you look at the username, and the username is haiku for you with a 4. And then you read it again. It's like, oh, it's actually a haiku. Haiku is like a poem, 3 lines, 5, 7, and 5 syllables each, I believe. And it was one of those things where, unless you were specifically looking for it, or you were just looking at the social feed more than you normally would, you might have missed out. It's just a cute little detail that 100% did not need to be there, but it just made my experience 1% better. There is a part in the DLC that is completely irrelevant to the story, so I don't feel bad talking about it. Spider-Man orders a pizza, right? And you know what? He's a young superhero in New York. Of course he's going to order a pizza. Why did we have to wait for the DLC for this to occur? I don't know. Probably because it's not that important. But the fact that he orders this pizza, he calls up. Obviously, he's got his number on private. Or I did see a comment saying if this was real, Spider-Man's identity would have been found out ages ago, just because of the social media and the amount of people that he's calling on his phone or his suit's internal contact system. But he calls up this pizza place and says, "Hey, it's me, Spider-Man." And the dude goes, "Hey, a Spider-Man, I'll get you the usual." And he goes, "Oh, yes, please. Double pepperoni," or something like that. So, yeah, do you want the same rooftop delivery? "Oh, yes, please, Mr. Paparizio." I can't remember the name. It's irrelevant. But there's a point where you do a whole bunch of missions in a row, and then Spider-Man says, "Whew, I'm tired. I need to, I'm hungry. I need to sit down, rest, eat." And he orders this pizza, and you swing across town to where, Spider-Man, I guess, in this game, canonically picks up his pizzas. And there's a hot pizza on a chair on a rooftop somewhere. And you just sit down, you eat it, and there's something about it that just makes him so much more human, The pizza guy goes, "Hey, if post on the socials, it helps our business." And he goes, yeah, sure. I don't actually think there was a financial interaction. So maybe Spider-Man gets free pizzas from this guy, and they get a bit of a plug in return. That, just by the way, for that pizza place, phenomenal deal. If you're, giving away a pizza, even a pizza a day for the endorsement of a superhero, that must be great business. But it's just so good at making Spider-Man seem more human. And I don't know if that's, important or not in a superhero game, but it just made me go, he's, doing this by night, he's trying to help people, save New York as much as he can, but he's still just a dude. At a couple of times in the main game, he says, "Wow, I've not been treating my body right. I haven't slept since this," and that helps to make him more of a human person in our minds, or at least mine. But there was something about this pizza scene that was just so key, because I think we've all been there, where it's just like, man, I did my uni assignment, and I didn't sleep well last night, and I haven't eaten since 11 this morning, and it's 6 o'clock now. Oh, I just want to eat a pizza. Right, everyone's been there. And I was really happy to see, myself relating to Spider-Man in that moment, because I feel like other people could. And it was just really good story writing for something that was so small and insignificant and not necessary, but been put in to, round out the character more. Oh, the other super, super integral bit is the update gives you the chance to listen back to calls that you've cut off. So a lot of the time, you'll find yourself swinging around the city and you'll get a call from Aunt May or something, and then you'll run into like one of those like alert time limited missions, right? Just a small crime or something you have to stop, or a side mission that you've been hunting for a while. So say, for example, you set a side mission waypoint, ages ago, and you headed there because you want to follow this subplot line. And just before you reach there, Aunt May calls you, right? And you hear half the conversation, and then it gets cut off because you step onto the marker and the mission starts without, you really focusing too much on the phone call. You're just going, I'm getting to this mission. In the main game, the amount of phone calls that I was intently listening to that were cut off for one reason or another, whether it was a submission or maybe I did something, I found a backpack and Spider-Man starts talking, it cuts off the phone call, and then that's it. You don't get the ends of that conversation. But whether it was the update or the DLC, one of the two, they came out around the same time, one of those let you, or made you go, oh, I should call back Aunt May. Oh, I should listen back to that voicemail that I only halfway got through. And then you're not missing out on those important dialogue options, because they're not always important. And I know I said options instead of a better word that describes them. Dialogue sequences, lines of dialogue. Anyway, there are times when I've missed out on something and gone, man, I really wish I could have gotten that. And now with this update / DLC, whichever one implemented it, that you can now, I'm assuming it's the update, not the DLC. Peter will go, oh, I missed that call. I'm going to call them back. Oh, I missed this voicemail. I only got halfway through it. I'll listen back to it now. And it's really good because it's one of those really story-rich games where every little thing that you're listening to is important and engaging. Even the J. Jonah Jameson podcasts, right? They're slightly different because you can listen back to them whenever you want. And hey, you know what? Maybe you can with the phone calls and I just don't know about it. But anyway, it is good because the world is so alive and you don't really want to miss anything, especially to, stop a mugging. The one complaint I have about the update / New Game Plus, apart from the fact that you have to do it, you have to play through the game again to get the last trophy, because I like hunting trophies, and having to play through the game again on a harder difficulty in New Game Plus, like I said before, just seems like really lazy game making, and I've never really found the appeal in it, even in Ratchet and Clank where New Game Plus is supposed to be fun. But anyway, that was one real complaint I had about it. The other complaint is that if you're playing through New Game Plus, it is highly, highly implied that you've already played through the game. Unless you're playing on your boyfriend's account or your friend's account who's done the full game, played through it, and then you've gone on as a New Game Plus file where you can start with all the suits and all the items, but you're just playing through for the story. Unless you're in that highly specific situation, you've probably played through the story before. And the reason I bring that up is that there are certain points in the game where there is rubber banding. So I believe rubber banding is the right term, where if I'm chasing someone, if I go too fast, they're going to speed up because, this sequence needs to play out over a certain amount of time to get out this much dialogue. Or if you're really, really slow, they're going to slow themselves down so that you don't get completely lost, or rather they don't get so far away that it's impossible to catch up. That should be removed in New Game Plus, in my mind, because I've played through the game. I enjoyed it. It was great fun. 10 out of 10. Maybe not 10, but a very, very good game. Why should I have to listen to all this story? And maybe it's too hard to implement, right? But if I'm chasing this car or I'm chasing this helicopter, I've already heard the story. I'm only playing through again for the trophy. So if I'm fast enough to catch it, within 10 seconds, let me catch it within 10 seconds. I think it would be especially good for people that want to speed run the game. Because New Game Plus streaming, I don't know if speed running, I don't know if it's specifically for starting a new game or if there's a New Game Plus section, but I think it would be really interesting to see how much, because these type of missions occur semi-frequently. It'd be interesting to see how much the runs change when this isn't a scripted length segment. It can be as fast as you can make it. Because there are ways, albeit small, to affect your traversal speed through the city. And when you're playing through for a trophy and for nothing else, you do kind of want to get through it as quickly as possible. And, obviously that's the case in a speed run as well. Maybe there are situations, and look, I'm not a game designer, so maybe it's done like this, you can't, or there is rubber banding because, hey, this section of the game needs to occur in this part of the city, and if you reach it too quickly, then you're going to be strangely teleporting forward, and it's not good for continuity. So maybe it's like that for a reason. I just don't like rubber banding. So that's all I had to say on regards to the DLC. I didn't really talk about the story too much. Don't want to give away any spoilers because it's fun. It's fun to play through. The story's really charming. It's just a nice short. It's only a couple of hours, maybe 3, 4, 5 to get everything done, which seems short, but again, the most recent DLC I bought was the South Park, so that's what I've got as a point of reference. And it was longer than the South Park DLCs, more engaging, more to do, and it was cheaper. So maybe Spider-Man's just better, or maybe this was just a case of South Park's being real bad, which is a shame because I enjoyed that game too. But yeah, the story's really charming. There's more fun things to do around the city. I'm not too much of a fan of the fact that the DLC world takes place on a different map. And what I mean by that is in the touchscreen menu, you go across to DLC and you go, oh, this is DLC part 1. So you hit that and then you're still in the same city, but all the original, points of interest are gone. And it's just the new game, the DLC's points of interest. So the DLC's challenges, the DLC's crimes. I would have liked to see it all on one map, which I understand can get a bit messy because you've got all this from the core game, and then there's going to be even more when the 3 DLCs add on. Maybe that's just me because I like to, see a full map and see, what is done and what isn't. And I don't know, I get some sort of sense of accomplishment when I see all these being grayed out because I've completed them and all these being in bright colors because I haven't. So again, that might just be a me thing, but I don't know, it felt a bit clumsy the way it went from core game to DLC on the same map but different at the same time, if that makes any sense. But yeah, everything that was added to the game for the most part was pretty enjoyable. The story was good. There wasn't any additions in terms of powers. There were a couple of suits, no extra gadgets. Dude, I don't know if you saw because it was leaked a couple of days early, but the suits that were added in this update, there was only 3 of them. Oh, they were ugly as, my god, they just looked so bad. One of them was the Captain Britain Spider-Brit, UK Spider-Man, his suit. I know it exists in the Spider-Verse comic books or whatever, but yeah, it was a reference to that Spider-Man, and it was sort of a combination of the original Spider-Man suit but implemented in a UK flag type of way, and it just does not look good. Because it's mostly just blue with some spider detail in the top near the neck. And, from memory, I looked at it once and thought it was ugly and went, ugh, not touching that again. But yeah, I thought the suits that were added in the DLC weren't great, but hey, we'll probably get at least 4, 5, 6 more in the next 2 DLCs combined. So hopefully they are good. Because as many suits as there were, and there's a lot, I just found myself sticking to the same few. And I don't know if that's me and what I like being strangely specific, or maybe because all of the suits or some of them were too similar to others, and I just didn't really see the appeal in some of them. But yeah, I personally found myself only sticking to like 3, 4, maybe 5 suits out of close to 30. So that was a slight disappointment for me. But hey, the suits that I used, I really enjoyed. So maybe it's highly detailed ones for some people, and some people just like the variety. It is worth noting that a lot of them were references to different Spider-Man content. So maybe if you were a bigger fan and you read all the comic books and you watched all the movies and you knew all the nerd lore, it might be cool because you're like, oh, this is from, this comic book strain 328. And this one is from the opposite of that, where Spider-Man is a demon from Ragnarok, whatever. Maybe if you knew the Spider-Man lore a bit more, it would be more interesting, all the different suits. But for me, it wasn't. But hey, great game. I will leave Spider-Man alone for 3 weeks. In terms of podcasts, I'll probably keep playing it. But I'll come back in a couple of weeks when the next DLC comes out and then sing praises of that because it will probably be good. I'm wearing glasses. Not sunglasses, prescription glasses. And this is really, really new to me. I think for a while I knew that I had eyesight problems. To be specific, my eyes are myopic, have myopia, which means that anything in front of my face is super clear, but anything more than a meter or 2 away starts to get blurry. And not blurry to the point where I cannot see anything, but if I'm looking at an A4 poster a meter away, if there's any writing on it, it's almost impossible to read. It's just blurry. And again, it's not the whole eye is blurry, it's just the fine lines start to not be so fine and they start to merge with everything else. I have a t-shirt with Mordecai and Rigby on it from Regular Show. And if you don't know the show, it's Rigby is a raccoon, I want to say. And he's got these like small, and just Google the picture of Mordecai and Rigby. Rigby's got these small black lines to indicate sort of his fur. And I was looking at that shirt in a mirror because I was wearing it, and without my glasses, about a meter away from the mirror, these small black lines I could not see. They were just swamped in this, because the rest of his body's like brown, and these small black lines I could not see in this ocean of brown. So if you're in your room or you're in a room right now, stand on one side of the room and look at the other side of the room. If everything is like crystal clear, as if you took a photo of it and were looking on your phone at it, you don't have what I have. You're fine. But for me, it was blurry. So if I'm standing, I've got a bunch of PS4 games and Switch games on my desk, and if I'm standing a couple of meters away, I can't read what is on the spines of those cases. And it was a big problem for me. I knew about it for a long time, but half of me was, oh, this is just a part of growing up. Your eyesight just gets worse and I can't see things clearly at a distance, but hey, if I want to see them, I'll just get closer. That's the way eyesight works. It's distance. Half of me was like that. And the other half of me was like, dude, you have got terrible eyesight, but do you? I don't know. Unless you see an optometrist, you're not going to know for sure. And then there was that part of me that's just, oh, well, if you don't see an optometrist, you don't know for sure. And if you don't know for sure, then, it's not real and I don't have to deal with it. The second I see an optometrist or a doctor, I'm going to have to deal with the fact that it is a problem. So the only reason I actually did it, apart from the fact that I desperately needed to, was the fact that I had to go and renew my learner's permit because I'm a heathen that's 22 and can't drive because I'm a proper invalid. I just get super paranoid behind the wheel. There's something about driving I just don't like. I don't like being in a car, having to focus on a million different things in my car, plus everyone coming behind me, everyone in front of me, and then everybody in the other direction. You have to focus on so much. And yeah, not a fan. But I have to do it. So I'm got my license renewed, and the woman was super nice. She got me to do the eye test, which you obviously have to, and it was very, very clear that I needed glasses. And she was like, oh, you're just scraping by with, I can give it to you now, even though you don't have your glasses with you. But you do realize you have to wear glasses when you drive. And I said, yeah, no, that's fine. I didn't have glasses at the time, but I said I did because I was going to get them. I've got them now. It's an interesting change. I never pictured myself as a person with glasses. I feel like the actual fact of wearing big old frames on your head is like a big deterrent for people. You're worried how you're going to look. Everyone worries that they're going to be like, Daria. Just this massive glasses doesn't fit in. Even though there is not a single thing wrong with Daria. Maybe a couple of things. But great show, great character. I'll defend that to my dying day. But I feel like people worry too much about how they're going to look. And granted, some people probably don't suit glasses that well. For me, I've never really suited sunglasses. I've just got a weird head. I don't know if it's my hair or because I got a narrow head, but sunglasses just look like you put sunglasses on a toddler for me. I've managed to find a set of frames that aren't too intrusive, to the point where I actually enjoy wearing them. And it's like 10% vanity of I like the way they look, and then 90%, I can definitely see now. I can see everything. The amount of times I've just found myself staring out the window, just looking at a tree line that I could barely see before. What was big green blurs is now I'm able to make out each leaf and each branch individually. It's crazy how much of a difference it makes. Just for anyone that lives in the area, which is no one, but I went to Forest Lakes optometrist, and the dude I saw was named Michael. So if you are, for whatever reason, living in Thornley, that's a place I went, and I would recommend, because my whole experience, and this could, differ from person to person, but I went in there, and the guy was quick enough at the whole process to make it feel professional, but he was slow enough, and he took as much time as he did, to the point where it made it feel like I was a customer. All right, I was a person, not just a number. He was, taking his time answering my questions, and it's a real hard middle ground to hit. But I was overall extremely happy with how he handled me as a patient. Do you say patient with people going in for glasses? I'm not sure. So I've had them for a few weeks now. I find myself wearing them most of the time because I like to be able to see. I've not actually done any driving since I've got them, which I should because I can't be an invalid forever. But I'm just enjoying wearing them. And, I've copped a lot of flack from mum just because, why have you not? I've been saying to get your eyes checked for years and you never have. And it was because I was upset with myself. I was upset that I let my eyes get to the point that they're at, that they got so bad. I don't know if it's a thing they just deteriorate over time or, spend too much time looking at screens, which if that's a thing, it was definitely my thing because I do a lot of that. But I was just upset with myself. And it just makes me think that everyone surely must have something that they neglect. Whether it's your weight or whether it's your dental hygiene, right? Maybe it's a small issue in your body health that is small enough that you notice it and yet also small enough that you don't get it checked out. I'm sure everyone has got something with them that they just put off, don't deal with, don't worry about. Go and check it out. Just get it checked out because mine was my eyes and I'm better off for it. It was a bit invasive at the start. I felt a bit down because of it because I wasn't too used to the glasses now. But hey, I can see great. I don't hate the way the glasses look and how I look in the glasses. So it's just overall been a really positive experience. And maybe, maybe you've got a similar thing. Maybe when you step, you've got like a corn or something on your foot. I can't really explain what a corn is. My mum's a podiatrist, so she could do it better. I'll get her on the podcast to explain a corn. But it's sort of like a tiny 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter piece of cardboard, right? It's just super thin. It's like under your foot. And every time you step, you can feel it under your foot. But it doesn't hurt. It's just a little bit annoying. And, maybe that's your thing. Maybe whenever you step, you just feel this little bit of something on your foot. Not on your shoe, not in your sock, but on your foot itself that you can't scrape away or pick off. And it just bothers you. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't ruin your day-to-day life. You can still run, do sport, exercise, whatever. But it's just like a little bit annoying. Maybe that's your thing. Go and get it checked out. Because 9 times out of 10, these things can be fixed. Glasses. That was a thing for me. And they are not fixed, but I'm able to see properly. And there are options. There's laser eye surgery. You can get that. There are these special types of contacts. Oh, these contacts are so cool. So the guy was telling me about them because I just asked and I thought it was interesting. I don't know if this is ever going to be a thing for me, but what it is it's a type of contact lens that you put in your eyes overnight, the same way you do, what are they called? Retainers for your teeth, right? Once you get your braces off, you have retainers, or you usually have retainers that you put on, a couple of times a week overnight just to keep your teeth straight. And these work the same way. You put them in your eyes overnight, and because of the way that the lens works, it changes the curvature of your eye. And then when you wake up the next morning, you take them out, you put them back in the whatever container they come in, and you can see just perfectly fine, as if you had no eye problems, right? 20/20 vision, I guess. No myopia, no. What's the other one? Where you can't see things that are close up to you. No, it's not diplopia. Or maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, no eye problems. You can just see normally. And then in some people, it starts to wear off towards the ends of the day. But most people get through a full day of my eyesight's perfect, go to bed, put them back in, wake up, brand new day. As long as you put them in every night, every day you can see perfectly. So they're cool. He was telling me about them, but they are super expensive, especially for me in the position I'm in right now, being a young person, when there are other things that you need to prioritize and you're not making $400,000 a year on doing a adult's job. But it is an option, and that technology is so cool. If anyone knows more about that, please let me know, because I would like to know how it works. I know he said it changes the curvature of your eye, but I don't know how. Because the guy, Michael, he was a super nice guy, but not to, what am I trying to say? Not to assume anything, but he looked like he might be a type of science fiction person that appreciates science fiction. And hey, I am the same, so no judgment here. But when he was describing it, he was so animated about it. I'm like, dude, is this a Horus Heresy book that you read? Is this science fiction, or is this a real thing? No, apparently it's totally real, even though it definitely sounds like science fiction. I've been doing a lot of cooking recently. I've always sort of liked cooking, but I'm starting to get into it more and more because I'm trying to be an adult who can fend for themselves in the real world. It's enjoyable. And some people say, cooking is just my thing. I love cooking. It's my passion. I'm so good at it. And there are other people that just suck at cooking. I can't cook. I'm a terrible cook. Can't do it. I'm great at this. World star athlete, whatever. I just can't cook. And I don't believe it. I truly don't believe it. I believe that anybody can cook if you've got a recipe in front of you. I think it's just impossible to screw up something to the point where it's inedible if you have a recipe instructions right in front of you. And I said that to my dad and my sister, and they said, go on, prove it. Make a pavlova. I've never made a pavlova before. I found a recipe. I watched a Mary Berry video, and I pulled up a recipe that was almost the same thing, and I made a pavlova. And it was a pretty solid pavlova. The inside was marshmallowy, outside wasn't quite crispy enough, but it was an overall 7 out of 10 solid pav. And I'd never made one before. I just found some instructions, followed them, and made it. And I'm so irked by the fact that people say that they can't cook. Because it's enjoyable. It's cool to make something with your hands, right? So doing a physical thing, actually doing what some might call a chore, making something that people eat and enjoy, right? And I've got a baker friend that lives in America, and his name is Miguel. He's like a proper professional baker, like all the bells and whistles, best thing you've ever seen. And that's what he says is his favorite thing about baking, right? You make a cake, everyone sits around, you sing happy birthday, and they all bite into this cake, and it's really nice, and you have created this moment with your cake. This moment could have existed without you and your cake, but it is only helped by having it. It just creates a certain added level of joy. So anyone can cook. I think you just find a recipe. It doesn't have to be a souffle. Start small, It's like a science. You follow the instructions, you do A and B, and you get C. And that's really where I wanted to lead in, because I was watching a TV show. It is Full Metal Alchemist. I was watching the 2003 version at the point of... Oh, that's a phone, but I'm not going to pick that up. Hopefully it doesn't get picked up in the microphone. I was watching the 2003 version. I've watched both. But at that time, I was watching the 2003 version, and there were two characters, an engineer and a librarian, or a person that was really into books. And they were both baking. And one of them said, baking is a science. You do this, you do that, you get this. You follow instructions. It is cause and effect. Cause and effect is not what I meant to say. That's what came out. But you do with this, like this, for this amount of time, you get this. And the other one, the librarian, was saying, it's all about self-expression. It's all about, freedom, making something beautiful, making something tasty, just using your senses, using your instinct to put things together and make a beautiful meal. And I've been talking with a lot of people that cook a lot, not just bake, but cook. And I've been trying to find out which is more accurate. Because they're two very different ideas, but you listen to both of them and you can really understand both points of view. I'm just trying to figure out in my own mind which is more accurate. And I want to say, at a very base level, cooking is a science. And it's both. In actuality, cooking is both. But I feel like cooking has a low skill floor, high skill ceiling. So it's quite easy to become competent, but it's hard to become that super high level, professional. At a core level, cooking is a science. If I put this many egg whites plus this sugar and beat it for this amount of time, I'm going to get this mixture. And when I bake it at this temperature for this amount of time, I'm going to get a meringue, right? I'm going to get a pavlova. I'm going to get a souffle, right? If I combine these ingredients like this, I will get this. It's the same thing with science. If I combine this atom with this atom, I get this. I know honestly nothing about science. So you replace atoms with molecules or elements, whatever is actually correct. But you get what I mean. If you add this to this, you'll get this. And that's just science. Even maths, you add 1 and 3, you get 4. That's just the way things are. With cooking, it's a little different because there's wiggle room. Your eggs, you might have, caged eggs versus free range, and, you might get a different taste. Or if you use this instead of this, different brand even, you might get a slightly different flavor or a slightly different taste. But overall, the things that are on the recipe add up and make this final result. I don't think anyone can argue that. I think at that base level, cooking is a science. However, cooking is an art when you get up to a certain level. And it's exactly what, that character was saying. You're just combining different things, Once you're skilled enough in cooking to cook without a recipe, you can go, oh, okay, I've got these steaks, and then I'll look in my spice rack and I'll add this, and then I'll, add that because I think the flavors would go nice together. Or if you're making like a pesto, you've got your basil and your cheese and whatever, and then you look at your herb garden and say, oh, some of that might go nice, and I'll put some of this, and then I'll put some thyme at the end when it's finished, or some lemon thyme, just to add a dash of this flavor. And it's all self-expression. Maybe self-expression isn't the right word, but it's all, instinct. It's about art. You want to make this flavor occur, right? And you're not following a recipe. There's no rule book. There's no guide. I mean, there is if you want to follow one, but you don't need to. And, I think adults, parents, especially ones that have got a cooking background, are great examples of this. When it's the end of the week, you haven't done your shopping yet, there's a very little in the fridge, you go, okay, well, what are we going to do? We got a pumpkin, we got 3 carrots, we got some steaks, and we got cheese. What do we do out of this? Right? And at that point, it becomes an art where you're using what you've got to make something beautiful, to make a nutritious, tasty meal for you and your family, or, you and whoever, or just yourself. And that's when it becomes an art, when you can look, or you can taste, or you can smell and go, a splash of this, a dash of that. And that's where the differentiation comes in. It can be a science. You can follow these instructions, and you can get this like a robot would, or it can be an art once you're good enough, where you can just add whatever and get something. It's like I don't want to say experiment because that has scientific connotations to the word, but it just it's sort of like an experiment. You just put these things together, you taste it, and if it's not right, you add a little of this and a little of that and a little more of that to take away that other flavor, and you've got something. I don't know. I wasn't watching the episode of Full Metal when I was recording the last podcast, so the fact that it even came to mind, I can't understand why it did, but it did, and I thought it was interesting. It's probably in part because I've been trying to cook more, but no, I highly recommend it. Something like a pavlova, probably not a bad one. The other one that I made recently was chocolate brulees, so they're like creme brulee but chocolate, as the name might imply. And both of those things are pretty simple to make. Don't require a lot of cleanup. There's only 4 or 5 ingredients to each of them, and if they turn out nice, they're pretty great. And if they turn out a bit average, they're still fine. And if they turn out bad, you've not invested too much. It was only 10-15 minutes of prep time. It was only $10 worth of ingredients. And just try it. And it might not be for you. I got a friend, she's just not a cooking type. She's happy to eat, doesn't really get involved with the cooking. And that's fine. That's your prerogative. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But if you've not done a lot of it, it's so much easier to get into than I thought it would be. Because I always thought that, it was... life was gatekeeping me from cooking. I don't know how to explain. Maybe I was gatekeeping myself. Because I would look at cooking and say, oh, but how do I know when the steaks are cooked? Oh, how do I know what flavors to go with this chicken? And you sort of just do it. When I was learning how to cook steaks, right? And my dad's got a cooking background, so I'm somewhat cheating. But when I was cooking steaks, he goes, okay, well, look into the spice cupboard, choose the ones that you think would go together. Open them up, smell them, taste them a little bit. Tell me what ones you think would go together. You go, oh, okay, well, I'll take this. this, and that. You know, Chinese Szechuan and a little bit of steak seasoning, some lemon pepper, whatever. I'm just listing off whatever's at the top of my head. And then you put them together on the steak and you smell it. And yeah, I can sort of smell these flavors. And then you go out and you cook it. And he says, okay, you do this much this time, flip it this much. Then you let them rest, come in, you eat them. I just didn't know it was that easy. And to say it's easy to cook a steak is a little rude because it's not just simple as that. It's very hard to cook a steak perfectly and consistently. You know, to get the same type of, you know, rare, medium rare, well done, to get, well, not well done, but to get it consistently through multiple steaks on multiple occasions, it's not the easiest thing in the world. It takes time to practice to be able to get it done right multiple times in a row. But the simple act of cooking it and choosing the right flavors and knowing when it's done, relatively speaking, is not as hard as I thought it would be. And I don't know why it took me so long. I was just so caught up with, oh, but what if I undercook it? I'm going to get salmonella poisoning. I'm going to get food poisoning. No, dude, just, you know, my dad takes a piss when I don't know something and I ask him, there'll be times real sarcastic, say, oh, why don't you just Google it? You totally can. You can just Google recipes. I've done it and it works. You know, the other day we had some cauliflower and Mum said, oh, okay, you know, you do this, I'm going to make some cauliflower cheese. I just said, nah, I'll do the cauliflower cheese. She goes, have you done it before? Nah, I hadn't. I Googled a recipe. I looked at 2 or 3. I picked one of them. I followed the instructions to the T and it just came out like cauliflower cheese. It was as tasty as cauliflower cheese can be. And it was just fine. It worked. So you really can Google these things. Hey Google, how long do I cook steaks for? Google will tell you. Hey Google, how do I know when chicken's cooked properly? Cooked through so I don't get salmonella. Google could tell you that. It's just a good thing to learn. You know, even if it's not like a passion, eventually you're going to need to learn it unless you want to, you know, be a streamer and just order DoorDash every day or Uber Eats. You're probably going to need to learn to cook. And you know, it's a good thing. You can cook for family and friends. You can cook for a date. You can cook for a mate. Cook for yourself. At times, there are going to be occasions where you're needing to know how to cook. And it really, really can't hurt just to learn the basics. So yeah, if you don't cook, try it. Just pull up your phone. And that's the biggest thing. Now anybody can do it. Anybody can pull out their phone and say, hey, Google, I've got some eggs and some potatoes and some, you know, cacciatore sausages. How to make an omelette. And Google will tell you how to make an omelette. So I think that's just about everything I wanted to cover. Spoke about Spider-Man update, spoke about having glasses, spoke about cooking. I think I'm looking at roughly 45, 50 minutes is what we're sitting at. So I think I will call it here, unless of course I'm like way under time, in which case I'll cut this out and I'll just talk about something else. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. First episode, or the first podcast was really good, got like 40 views. The second one, looking at 5. So, you know, hopefully this one will sit somewhere in the middle. If you've listened this long, you've obviously got some dedication. So feel free to leave a comment on what you would like to hear or how I can improve. Saying, hey, talk about things but don't ramble so much is a perfectly valid criticism I'm happy to take on. Anyway, thanks for listening. Have a good one. Until next time, don't text and drive, and I'm out.